life is going to be a constant version of that test retest model, and you're gonna improve in one area and then it's gonna make another area glaring. And like you guys already said, but just to reiterate, just find that one thing and get to work. If you're really that upset about the way something is going in your life, you have the ability through some of the tools that we put out there to make some changes. And that could be, I didn't make it to the level during the season that I wanted to. All right, we got an answer for you. You know, when I'm coaching, I don't know how to get a point across to an athlete, whatever it is. There's a lot in this episode, depending on where you're at in your life, and just pick those things out and try to move the needle a little bit. Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast. Full goon squad in the house.
Cheer.
But we're in the future. Woo! I'm actually in Italy right now.
Get out of here.
I'm in Italy right now, and I was in Switzerland last week.
Incredible.
How you like that? I'm in Italy, and I am within, depending on what day it is that you're listening to this, a few miles of Lewis Hamilton. And I just realized that the other day, and I was like, fuck, I'm going to be there when they're racing. And I did not, the Monzas that week. I also didn't know where that was.
Is that kind of pizza, Monza?
Yeah.
But it's I don't know, a suburb. Do they have suburbs in Italy? Probably not.
Burbs.
It's a burb of Milan. That's where.
Are there tickets? Can you get tickets?
No.
Sold out?
I'm also up in Lake Como. So it's like, all right, Maya, hear me out.
Can you see them up there?
Hear me out. I know this is a nice lake and there's mountains and stuff. We rented this house.
There are cool cars.
But there are people driving.
That sounds like Maya's favorite activity
too. I could see them pass me at 200 miles an hour.
I'm going to be able to see a couple cars pass me for like a net total of a quarter of a second.
I hear the sound is incredible and they really stick to the ground on the turns. Hear me out. And I just want to see them in person. What do you think of that? You guys think that'll go well?
Yeah, should be for it, definitely.
All right.
It's your vacation too.
Right? My vacation too.
Fucking
I want to watch
your anniversary too.
Exactly.
Anniversary.
Before we get started on part 2 of recovery protocols and how to personalize them, I wanted to start a new segment. And then go on vacation for 2 weeks and forget that the segment exists in the next episode.
100%.
What do you guys think?
That'll happen.
I think we can achieve that.
All right. Workout of
ourselves up for success right
workout
now.
of the week. You guys are heading into, if you're listening to this when it gets dropped, you're heading into week 5 of phase 1. Week 5 is the final full volume week leading into primer week and retest week. So what I want to do, and we're definitely going to do it 3 weeks from now.
Definitely.
Is we're each going to pick a piece, our favorite one from any of the programs that we have, talk about it. Maybe there's some crossover, maybe there's not. I'm going to let you start, Sherb.
Oh, how nice of you. I'm actually going to go with a Team Misfit piece that Coach Kyle wrote. We jokingly around the office called this the CrossFit Games piece for affiliates, but it's 4-time.
Well, the original version, this one I think is
it's better.
It hit the mark. It's still a spicy one, but
it's going to be a good test.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good test for a lot of people.
One of our members did 30 bar muscle ups in a row, and then he got an idea after that happened.
Accurate.
90
that did
seconds
happen.
do 30 unbroken bar muscle ups.
Anyways, it's 4-time, partition however you want, with a 15-minute time cap, 40 bar muscle ups, and 100 burpees. And obviously the def dose of programming there. A lot of people are like, holy shit, 40 bar muscle ups and
standard old school burpees.
Old school burpee. Yep. Just get up, open your hips up. You know, we encourage members to typically try to reach for something just to adhere to the standard of open hip. But I really like this piece because I think a big part of what training needs to be is education. And this piece allows you to acceptably experiment with many different ways. And one of the things that we talked about as a group here as we were writing these workouts and Kyle kind of pitched to us is like, you can give an athlete, all right, you're going to end up going through 8 rounds of, 5 and 12 with some burpees left over at the end, or you could try to do an EMOM of 4 bar muscle ups and, 10 burpees, which obviously is going to be really hard. But giving athletes, ideas for ways to attack is a fun thing to kind of see play out on the floor. And as coaches, like you watch and you're like, all right, like that person may be a little bit fitter than that person over there, but this person has a strategy we think might be the best way to do it. And, it's fun for us to watch it play out, but it's also interesting to see, like, were we right when we guessed, like, this would be the best strategy, or is that going to be the best strategy? So
you did say partition anyhow, right?
Yeah. So athletes can decide how to do whatever they want. One of the things we like to do at our whiteboard brief is to help athletes, set them up for success with giving them some ideas. But, there will be that athlete who's like, it sounds really good. I'm going to do 20 rounds of 2 and like 5 burpees. And it might be the best strategy for the day that, and that might end up being the one that gets passed along from class to class to class. So for the ability for one athlete to kind of influence the others and to see how things play out, I think that's one of the more interesting pieces coming up. And that's why I picked it as my piece of the week.
You're up.
Up.
4 rounds.
C2 bike, 2 minutes.
AMRAP, 12 minutes, 12 double kettlebell front rack step-ups, 15 GHD sit-ups, 12 step-ups, 25 GHD sit-ups, 12 step-ups, 35, 12, 45, 12, and 55. This piece was, so if you guys remember from week 1, the GHD sit-up test with the sandbag carry, the sandbag shuttles, GHDs, and sandbag cleans. So we had week 1, kind of that test, which involved all the GHD work. We've kind of bounced back and forth between skill work with GHD, kind of doing stuff for time, reps for time, and then putting them back into a Metcon. And this week is your last kind of week of, okay, we're putting these GHDs back into a Metcon under intensity. What can you do with this volume specifically? So it's kind of it's a little bit intentionally unbalanced toward the GHDs as far as total volume goes. Those double kettlebell front rack step ups are pretty gnarly as far as like midline demand and just metabolic fatigue as well. But given that the GHD was kind of I had to put together the progression for the phase, that piece seemed to stick out a little bit. It gets you guys pretty close to that, or actually it surpasses the total volume of GHDs that you did in that test piece. So it's really kind of your last checkpoint to be like, okay, has that GHD work been paying off? Have you been paying attention? Have you been taking notes? What's your strategy going to be like when it goes from a really manageable set to you're going to be sitting on that machine for a couple minutes, chipping away at hopefully finishing close to a full round.
Feedback on those GHDs they have been very effective from the couple athletes that I've spoken to about the fast sets into like the one big set. Most athletes are like, this is a way I've never trained my GHDs before. And I'm excited to see how that ends up playing out at the end of the phase. But the intensity in that piece has been really good. And I feel like that's how we move the needle in this.
We got to manipulate muscle fibers within a movement the same way that we do energy systems as a whole, right? You got to get people knowing that they can fire when they need to, and you got to get people to know that they can just down and up and down and up. They're different.
Yeah. What does your energy system readiness say about your ability to do 150 GHDs in a short period of time? And we always see that get tested at quarters, semifinals, even at the highest level of the CrossFit games. Yeah. And people, man, it's one of those movements that's rapidly becoming like, great, you can do 150 of these in a workout. How fast can you do these when you get on that apparatus, and how well can you move? So that's part of the reason we've had the speed sets combined with the kind of volume accumulation.
We had a workout like this for mock games that was not similar in energy systems as much as it was just this combination of movements. And I think you have the gift of figuring out a skill within this workout that you normally wouldn't get. 35-pound kettlebells for men are very manageable. What happened that I didn't like about the games event is too many athletes don't know how to hold kettlebells in a front rack. And it was actually more about their arms than their midline or their legs. And to me, that's a signal, we got to work on these. We got to figure out how to do this. So not only do you not need to be in this massive rush to get back onto the GHD, like you can do this in a warm up as well. So you can warm up and try to figure out, even with heavier kettlebells, love the proprioception, like style warm up, the 53s or the 70s, doing some step ups with them and realizing what is the best way to hold this is probably going to be the best way to hold the lighter ones that you're going to use in the Metcon as well. And then you can actually start to figure something out. You should not be thinking about, I can't hold on to these anymore. It should be either, if you've got super strong legs, weak midline, vice versa, you should feel it there. You should not be worried about holding on to kettlebells in your front rack position. Week 5, day 3, we have until 50/40 muscle ups are completed, 30/24 calorie row, 1 max set of muscle ups. There's a whole bunch of reasons why I like this workout, but the main reason sort of leans into why when you go to our website every single time, or every single day for your programming, you see do these mandatory pieces and then choose what's left over. We are taking this even further and saying, okay, so this is a non-mandatory piece and you can personalize the piece. We do it with percentage work with lifts in certain workouts. And with this, we can go in and say, okay, I usually rewrite workouts like this for a remote athlete, or give them a note that says, go for it, or start low. And even if you get better, that's great. Strategy. Exactly. Like we had the toes to bar one the other day, and I knew Sherb was going to get in the realm of 90 reps and with the other movement that I had put in for him. So I just made it 4 rounds instead. So I can really know what that volume sort of looks like. So with this, when you're going in and reading it on an individual level, of course, you have to decide whether it's an appropriate piece for you on that day, with it being non-mandatory and you having some other choices. But when you go into it, it can be for everybody because it can be done in so many different ways. So you have to row 30 calories every time and then jump up on the rings. And you're doing that back and forth until you reach or 30/24 until you reach 50/40 muscle ups. If you're great at muscle ups, let her rip. See what happens.
Test them.
Exactly. If you're like me, I love muscle ups. I hate rowing into muscle ups. So it's like, I'm actually going to start a bit more. I want the fatigue from the rower to really build up. So I'm going to start with a really manageable set and see how long I can hold on to that. You can get a lot of information about what does it do to my rowing once I get off and get back on, all that stuff. So you're basically able to personalize this. And with it being so far away in the season, do not be scared of personalizing it in a way that scares you a little bit.
Yeah, I would encourage most athletes to effectively think about the strategy they'd be most nervous to try to employ and then consider doing that, because that's where you stand to gain the most from this piece. You know, going into, and I think this might have been one of the ones I wrote, maybe, I don't know, I think it was, but the idea here is that you can take that, you can take the bait here and just say, you know what, I love muscle ups and I can just kind of casually row and I'll beat all my friends and that's great and all. Whatever, like you won one piece that no one's going to remember. Or you can go into it and be like, you know what? The last time we had to do something with rowing and muscle ups, I didn't know where my threshold was. And I didn't know that at around the 12-minute mark of a workout like this that has me feeling some kind of way, all of a sudden my muscle ups went away. It's like, how do I chase that and how do I get better at that? Well, it's really hard to do that with like something like EMOMs or like a long AMRAP where you have long breaks between muscle ups. Like, even if you row kind of slow, you're still only getting somewhere around 90 seconds to 2 minutes of break between those muscle ups. And you can use that period of time between those sets to really calibrate that feeling again, so that when you go back into competing at a quarterfinal, semifinal, or, other local competition, you know that you can row at whatever pace and still be able to hop up and do X amount of muscle ups, which is extremely valuable information when you look to compete or when you look to really see what you have kind of in the tank.
Truth. All right. You heard it here, folks. Workout of the week. Workouts of the week. The newest, most popular segment on the Misfit
Definitely
podcast.
Most popular.
So today we are continuing. This is a part 2, a cliffhanger, if you will, personalizing your recovery protocols. Just a quick synopsis of the previous episode. We sort of put out there why we're qualified to have this conversation, because we have it all the damn time at the affiliate level. All 3 of us get pretty nerdy with this stuff and have, kept up with how to update this information for the last decade or so. We covered sleep, nutrition, and hot and cold therapy. Go check out the episode from last week. I really think that the sleep and nutrition, in terms of order, it's really good to start there first. Hot cold was a little bit more on the arbitrary side. I wanted to get that into the last episode. But now we're going to move on to warming up and cooling down. Hey, Sherb, how is it possible that warming up is part of my recovery protocol?
Wait, what? Warming up's part of your recovery protocol?
Tell me, how's it possible?
I mean, one of the things that we want to try to do with the stress that training provides is to get you the most optimal adaptation. Now, one of the absolute worst ways to get yourself to adapt to something is to shock your body right off the bat and say, all right, let's start today's workout, which is a 50-calorie bike sprint with no warm-up. What do you think is going to happen to you about 15 calories into that bike sprint? all of that blood that was once in your digestive organs is now flooding your legs, and all of a sudden it gives.
Well, that's what I think is going to happen. I don't know if the listener is going to be like, "Damn it, the blood's gone from my liver."
Well, fuck, no blood in my liver. But you all know that feeling, that shock, that panic moment where all of a sudden it's like, hey, there are days where I can do this and it doesn't do anything to me, and now today I didn't do what I normally did, and it sucks. It's like, maybe I should consider warming up, because again, we're looking for optimal adaptation. Are there days where maybe you only have 15 minutes and you're like, fuck, I'm gonna go out the garage and give it a couple bike rips? You know, I'm thinking like us playing like fantasy football or watching football on Sunday, and you're like, shit, the game's in 15 minutes. I better go breathe heavy so I can eat some cheeseburger nachos ahead of the game.
Oh, man, that's coming up soon.
Yeah,
that's
I know.
coming up soon. Wow.
So essentially what this allows your body to do is it helps teach your body how to ramp up for exercise, and then we'll get to it in a minute here, but the cool down kind of do the opposite effect here. And the idea here is that we want our body to adapt to training, but we want to make sure that we signal the process is about to start. We do that process, and then we signal our body how to get out of that process, because again, if your body constantly lives in fight or flight, you're not recovering. And that leads to things like extra stress you don't want. That leads to like glucose intolerance. Is actually a really interesting study I just read yesterday. And it was, people who tend to train at too high a volume relative to like what their fueling needs are, typically live either hyperglycemic or hypoglycemic and have problems with recovery. And what that to say is that, like, we always hear us preach, like, do less better. That's more evidence on why that would be deleterious to your performance, is if you're constantly fucking with your own blood sugar and trying to get all you can from training, you're effectively reducing the efficiency of your training. Sure, can you get fit doing 6 pieces a day at 80% over a long period of time? Sure. Could you do the same thing like we talked about with you, kind of find that like minimum effective dose to move the needle? That to me is a more effective use of your time. So making sure you ramp your body up is educational, not only for your own like thought processes, but it actually teaches your body how to get ready for exercise, which then becomes, all right, how do I get out of exercise to recover for the following piece? So effectively just educates your body in the processes that need to happen ahead of intensity.
Yeah, I think you can start small with this concept and then build, depending on where you're at in your career, how much of this topic, when you're listening, you're like, what the fuck are these guys talking about? Really simply, if you guys just had everybody's 80%, 90% bench press loaded up when they walked into the gym and you told them to snag a couple reps, you might be able to figure out what that would feel like. And maybe you'd hear some piano strings snap inside of the gym.
Cheers, I think, too. A couple people,
we've got to work out with, I don't know, deficit handstand push-ups and heavy deadlifts. You don't warm up. How are you going to feel afterwards? How are you going to feel the next day?
Body bag.
So that's our like level 1, very obvious. Like, we understand why we have to warm up in some ways. What Sherb was referring to is making sure that there's blood flow adequately to your entire body, especially when you're going in to do a Metcon. Less waste means less waste. It means less soreness.
Damage, yeah.
Exactly. But then we can get into activation. What happens when you have those days you don't really understand why your back squat hurts your knee, your deadlift hurts your back? And then you think back on it and you're like, oh yeah, they've got the warm-up protocol and they've got the, the stuff with the glute bands and this and that. And I've like really sort of got my mind into the mode of, we need to turn these big movers on and not just, rely on stretch reflex and stuff like that. So you can continue to like work on these concepts as you go, and you can go deeper and deeper and figure out how not only are we making sure performance is as high as possible, but sometimes just as important as that is, can I be ready to do it again?
I think the sort of bulletproofing yourself against this, what the training stress is going to do to your body, is important here, because a lot of like what the activation does for your body is, we move in the planes that don't naturally happen in a lot of our CrossFit movements. You talk about people doing the crossover symmetry against like handstand push-ups. You have a handstand push-up, which is like primarily like frontal plane, meaning you're kind of just pressing, like extending and flexing your arm. And then you're like, why would rotational things in the transverse plane, meaning kind of like moving and spinning kind of thing, why would that help me? And it's, all of these big movers need to be activated, but also there's all these little like ancillary or, supplemental muscles that are responsible for making sure like, the head of your humerus, your upper arm bone stays in the right spot as you go through your press. And those necessarily don't get turned on or activate at the same rate as like, you hop on the assault bike and you go for 5 minutes and like you feel generally warm, but some of these muscles haven't had a chance to activate. And then when they aren't activating, you potentially can put your body in suboptimal positions, which, can lead to someone like sort of working at some threads and over time just kind of wear them down. And then things like a slap tear happens, or, someone hurts something in their knee because they haven't taken the time to make sure that they've prepped those joints. Yeah, no, sorry. But I was just thinking of an example that wasn't your shoulder. But the idea here is all those small muscle groups get the chance to actively fire so that you can stay in optimal positions. You talk about people, and we've done this experiment, because if you ask someone to come to a squat day at Misfit Gym Portland 5 years ago, and you said, go grab that little green band and do some walk, and be like, the fuck does that do? I'll do some light squats and I'll do some heavy squats. Check. But now people come in and they're like, wow, the muscle groups that I didn't think I had are sore today. And wow, I was able to go below parallel with so much ease, and driving my knees all of a sudden felt better. And it's like, oh, that's because you educated your body and like what those positions need to look like and feel like, so that when you go to do the main lift, that's just your default position instead of something that feels completely foreign.
All right, Misfits, just a quick break to shout out our show sponsors and save you a little bit of dough on our favorite products. Speaking of favorite products, it's been a long time coming. Very, very soon. Not yet, but very, very soon. You're going to be able to head to properfuel.co. You're going to be able to click on this beautiful little black bottle with blue and white writing that says hydrate on it. You're going to be able to add that to your cart with your other favorites, Proper Recovery, maybe a stem and a non-stem. You train at different times. Time zones. Yes, I don't know what that has to do with it. But we have a brand new product coming out. Proper Hydrate is a long time in the making. I'm very prideful of this product. I get very excited about this product because I'm the one who decides how much and what ingredients are going into our products. And I take that very seriously, both because I take them on a regular basis. I stole a case the day that they showed up. And looking through the research to really see when the average athlete trains for about an hour and they sweat, what is coming out and at what levels. So, making sure that, by the way, does taste very good.
It's amazing.
So we did, the usual taste testing to make sure that it came out really well. And that's actually another thing that cues your body to want to drink more water is that sort of stimulation of the taste buds. But you are getting a level of sodium and potassium and calcium and what is truly coming out. And what we did is we took the average sweater and the Sherb, and the one dosage is right in the middle. Okay. So percentages of what's excreted for the average athlete translate very well from someone who needs like a 500 milligrams of sodium post-workout. That's going to be your normal person.
That should be like the equivalent of like,
growth
on the
and
proper
recovery.
fuel, like growth versus recovery, like
Normal versus Sherb.
normal versus Sherb. Yeah.
So someone in the middle is going to take a nice level scoop, and someone like Sherb's going to need that heaping scoop to get closer to the 1,000 milligrams. But really, really just excited about this new product, and the research is there, and the taste is there. We think you guys are really going to like it, and you're going to be able to use the code word MISFIT at properfuel.co to save.
We're also brought to you by Sharpen the Axe. You can head to sharpentheaxeco.com. Use the code word KEALA, K-E-A-L-A, to save 10%, donate 10%, because when this podcast airs, we're about 5 days away from the Ultimate Hawaiian Trail Run. That's a great group of people to kind of support. They do excellent things out there, so definitely use that code. But I did want to talk about the fact that Sharp Days just did happen. The site, for the most part, might be a little bit wiped out, but we made sure this year to make sure there are plenty of new running joggers. We've taken the feedback from the community and we said, what could make the already awesome pant awesome? How can we make them better? So took feedback from the community. And again, I'm someone who loves gear. I buy a lot of clothes. Yeah. It's just who I am as a person. And I have yet to find a pair of running pants that are better than the SSE and the Sharpen the Axe running pant. So again, if you're looking for the best pants to go out for a nice long run, something I'm getting ready for is a nice marathon run. I might be wearing my pants on that run.
Bold move.
Definitely check those out. Yeah, I'm not sweaty at all. We just talked about hydrate. I'll have 48 scoops during the marathon. But again, you can head to sharpentheaxeco.com, use the code word KEALA, K-E-A-L-A, save 10%, donate 10%, and get that new running pant.
And lastly, we are brought to you by Misfit Athletics and Team Misfit affiliate programming. If all this stuff that we're talking about seems a little bit overwhelming, well, the good news is that basically all of it is implemented somewhere on misfitathletics.com. When you see the warm-ups, you've got high intensity warm up protocol. You've got a, reach pacing protocol. We're asking you to send it as hard as you can. There's a warm up and cool down protocol for that. There's activation protocols. All the stuff that we're putting so much emphasis on this episode is tied right into the programming for both individuals and, to a slightly lesser extent, but still there to the at the affiliate level. So if you want to kind of see how all this stuff ties into your programming, head to misfitathletics.com. Get a 2-week trial to get started, so there's absolutely no risk to signing up, or teammisfit.com for the affiliate programming to kind of get a feel for what we're talking about. Okay, back to the show. I think you kind of have to think about it as far as like, what is the, like, so I'm going in, I'm about to back squat heavy. It's like, well, what do I need to, what gets me to the point where I'm sitting in the bottom of a perfect back squat position? And you start to think to yourself like, okay, well, it turns out I've been sitting in a chair all day. So pretty much all of my muscle tissue is just either matted down and turned off and just not ready to work. So, and blood is generally just circulating around my organs to keep me alive. Yeah. Because I don't need my fucking calves right now. So we warm up, you get the blood flow, you start to warm the tissue, start to warm muscle, you start to oxidize blood so that it's actually prepared to deliver energy to muscle cells and to turn whether it's ATP or glucose or fat into energy for you to kind of get ready for that exercise. And then when we're talking about activation protocols, again, making sure the big movers are ready to be big movers. We do a fuckload of the midline activation, turning on psoas, glutes, again, all the biggest movers we want to put people to one, just make sure that they are ready to lift weight, but also more like, unless you're one of the 10% of people whose mobility is pretty flawless, like the odds that you're getting into a perfect squat position, like fully below parallel so that you're able to actually develop strength through a full range of motion, like the odds that you're prepared to do that without going through these kind of protocols is pretty low. So we're setting ourselves up to get in the right position, to develop strength and develop fitness in the positions that we're after, not just kind of checking the box of like, am I a little bit sweaty? I think that's a good start, but it's like, what are we trying to get after with this training session?
And I think the easy thing you can say to your, whether that's your affiliate members or your training buddies, when they're like, skip that and just get into it. It's like, do you not like want to get as strong as you can? Do you not want to get all that you can from this piece? Like, are you okay with like a C effort? And if you are, like, don't expect to be surprised when you come back around and you're not getting stronger. Like the people that take the extra time, and we're thankful that the culture over at our gym next door is very well in tune with the fact that like, we don't just like make people do silly things for the, just for our own entertainment. Mm-hmm. It's like everything that we're trying to do here is to get you the most optimal adaptation from your training. Wouldn't you want that? Don't you want to get as strong as you can? And then when they see and they look around the entire space and they see those athletes who typically squat more, move better, do all these extra steps to get themselves ready, it just becomes a culture that kind of trickles down to everybody else. And that's sort of why we keep bringing it up over and over and over again, is because we know that the best in our sport, the best in this field, take the time to do these things. If you were to follow suit and follow along, that gap that feels insurmountable between you and them right now starts to get a little closer and a little closer and a little closer. Because again, you are doing the habits of what we want the pros to do, because we think it's the best way to get strong or to get ready for a workout.
You also get a lot of athletes who will ask like, hey, what do I need to do to improve this movement? And in a lot of instances, it's like, well, you can't put your arms straight over your head. Like, how do you expect to get into a good handstand push-up position if your range of motion is, your arms are 15 degrees in front of your shoulders? It's like you're tight. Why can't I squat more? It's like, well, because you've never seen the bottom of a squat, because your hips are so tight you can't get down there. And I had this conversation with a camper who was always kind of riding the line of a parallel squat, and they're just like, yeah, I've just never been comfortable down there. And it's like, you've never been down there. Like, why would you be strong in a position that you never actually visit? And I'm sure we'll get to that with the mobility stuff, but it's like the warming up, that's like the key to the door, right? You warm up, you get the mobility, you get the activation, you enable your body to get in positions that basically elicit fitness and allow you to develop strength and fitness, not just like, am I warm? Can I do these things? Yes, I can. Okay, that's good enough.
Yeah, and you guys are both bringing up some examples that have to do with being at the affiliate level. And as someone personally who if I went into either of your classes and you asked me to do X, Y, and Z, and I bought in for a certain period of time and I did not get results coming out the other side,
Sure.
I would have issues with that. That place next door is the fucking Mecca. Like, I can't get over just you randomly walk into our affiliate, and I'm not tooting my own horn because I don't coach over there. You walk into our affiliate and the way that people move and the way that people buy in, that's that like symbiotic relationship that you're going for with the coach athlete relationship all across the board. You know, I call it the 50-50. The athlete meets us halfway and we're like, okay, we got the plan for you. We're ready to go. You need to supply the work and the dedication, all that stuff. Like, that's what we are aiming for with the blog as well. It's the same concept. We're not asking you guys to do a bunch of random shit. We're not like, well, we're on the coaching side, so everything's very theoretical. And if you don't do this, you're not doing it right and you're not living up to the standard or whatever. We are trying to get you as fit as humanly possible, mobile, strong, skilled, confident, know what you need to do, know what your routine is, all of that different stuff. And I think that sort of level of, again, you guys talking about it from that point of view, you guys are able to convince people to do that next door because they then do lift more weight. And I mean, those beautiful angels next door, the way that they move at the affiliate level blows my fucking mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's we give that credit to the coaches as well, not from necessarily even a coaching standpoint, but the fact that all the coaches take those classes, so they go through the same warm-up protocols that are on the website. Like, half of the stuff that's on the website was written by one of our affiliate coaches, or I guess all of it was by an affiliate coach who has taken our other coaches' classes, who have introduced like, oh, here's a different way to activate this muscle group. And then like the people like Austin and Caroline, who are obviously the pinnacle of fitness, are doing those things. And it's like, well, if those guys are doing it, maybe I could too. And all the coaches do it. And now like 25% of the 5 p.m. classes in the gym a little bit early doing a Maffetone warm up or something like that. It's like, I don't fucking know what to do with this, but it's great. keep it up.
I mean, all three of us and typically our remote athletes afterwards are put through the ringer on these things first. And I think that is also helpful for us.
Proof of concept
we have this ability to believe in what we're selling, which I'm sure comes across in what we do, because it's not just, it's hard to take information from other separate sports and bring it into CrossFit. It needs to be changed. It needs to be moved around, what works best, that kind of thing. So I just think that's a really important sort of asterisk to some of that stuff, because you can get into some real silly shit. And then if you don't see the results, that's when you get sort of jaded about what it is.
Well, I think it's really important that people recognize that part of that confidence we have with what we deliver is through self-experimentation and what has worked really well. And if, we tried something for ourselves and it didn't give us any benefit, I don't think we'd be passing along to others. So, when you see someone in there and they're like, all right, we're going to do 30 psoas activators ahead of back squatting. Everyone's like, what the fuck is a psoas? Who cares about that piece of shit? I don't even know what that is.
It's the filet mignon of the human.
Wait a second. Do this and then go squat. And they're like, holy shit, I've never had a better squat day. And I'm like, guess what? You used your psoas. Now you know what it is.
Some asshole connected our spine to our hips.
Asshole connected my asshole to my hip.
Basically.
But again, that's sort of where that confidence comes from and why we believe in these things. And, one of the things that we're continuing to do even to this day is we constantly experiment with things that help us or make us feel like, all right, could this help us better, so that if it works for us, we can then pass that information along to other people who can now go, all right, like, fuck, I used to have knee trouble or ankle trouble, or, I couldn't figure out why I always struggled to pull myself down to the full squat. And then it's because I've tried these X things and all of a sudden I see a benefit. Great. And it becomes a culture you establish. So it's like something you don't currently do. Start, and you could create a culture around what you do in your own community. And then it just becomes what your gym does. Like, again, if you go to Misfit Gym Portland 5 years ago, not a single glute band was had. If someone had one, it was one of those super thick ones. You couldn't even like separate your knees 6 inches. And you're like, why do we have this thing? But now it's something that's used.
Because they were made for powerlifters.
Exactly. Not us.
I can't move on to cool down before saying I don't think I would be alive and sitting here today without Voodoo Floss.
Band.
We've got plenty of resources on our YouTube channel for that. The stuff is just,
it's called
very
Voodoo
special.
Floss for a reason. It's magic.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And then just the concept of, wanted to reiterate something Hunter said about the activation. CrossFitters are strong. They do have the big movers. They've developed them. They don't do that much shit to know how to use them. And that's the sort of, we can go back to the Globo Gym model. We all knew about our rear delts and our front delts and the difference between when you close grip, your shoulders hurt, and you wide grip, your chest hurts. And you really would like hammer a movement home and understand, you know, whether you knew the names or not, you understood anatomy and activation on a very high level. So that's one thing that they have right, that people should, even if it's just, you can grab 10 pound, 5 pound, 15 pound dumbbells and put yourself quickly into a hurt locker as a CrossFitter with these isolated activation exercises, just because that's something that we don't normally do. So when you go to do that, that's when you can really be like, now I understand why I'm a strong person and my strict press sucks, or why, like, I don't understand how that person catches the bounce in the squat and then their hips just come through, like that sort of thing. Like I catch the bounce and then I get stuck. Got to learn to use your glutes, got to learn how to activate your midline, all that different stuff. So activation is just one of those things where, as a CrossFitter, just because you have those muscles does not mean that you are using them in the moment where it probably is going to help you the most. Cooling down. This one's a little bit easier to explain how this goes into recovery. The kind of fun nuance, not so fun for people the more fit they are. Basically, what we're looking at here is CrossFit is one of the only training methodologies or sports where we just drive you up to zone 5 and then say, you're done, you're good.
Good job.
You felt that this morning, I'm guessing, Sherb?
I got on the saw bike and rode for about 9 minutes before I did anything else once the workout was over. So yes, been there before. But again, historically, the protocol was roll in a pile and, you know, try to like flop back and forth like a dead fish until you felt reasonable enough to then hopefully sit up, take a sip of water, and then walk slow. And again, you have to start small with some of these things. It's going to be really hard to convince yourself after you do something that's terrible, like a bike sprint, to get up and go for a walk like right after, or, you know, you do your last one, you stay on the bike and you
I'm going to convince him right now.
Oh, good.
All right. So
yesterday's class workout was like that. I was pedaling around for a solid 5 minutes. I had to try real hard to keep my heart rate up too, which is the problem. I didn't want to move, but I had to.
So no one listening to this podcast doesn't understand. Sometimes you're breathing real heavy and sometimes your muscles are singing in a way that you just can't understand what's happening inside of your body. When you are feeling that burn, your body is having a tough job clearing out the waste products that are happening as a result of intense muscle contraction, less oxygen being delivered, all that good stuff. When you do that and you get those waste particles in your body when it's at the absolute worst, and then you stop a workout, the only two things that can get rid of them immediately stop. We get two things happening with our circulatory system. One, your heart takes care of it. Your heart's pumping, pumps blood throughout your body, but beats per minute, how many times your heart pumps at that peak, it's trying to clear waste as much as possible. It's beating 180 times per minute. If you're super fit and you stop, it all of a sudden is down at 120 and then 110 and then 100 and then maybe even 90 fairly quickly. And what you're doing is you're telling your body with that lower heart rate that it is no longer needs to clear waste, that it can just go back to everything's normal. Not only will you not clear as much because it's not pumping as much, it also might start going back towards your midline, because that's where, you know, your blood likes to live, near the heart and near the organs and all that stuff when we're not moving. The other thing is your lymphatic system. So when you have muscle contraction, the lymph fluid that's in your body, when you muscle contract, it pushes it back up towards your heart. So you need to clear waste, have muscle contraction, and have an elevated heart rate. Those are the two things that you need to do. So when you go to our warm up and cool down protocols and it says, keep your heart rate above 165 minus your age for 5 minutes, and then above 160 minus your age for 5 minutes, and then keep moving for the final 5 minutes. That's what we're doing. The final 5 minutes, again, we are continuing to tell the body it's okay to start to get to that point, but we are still having muscle contraction. Sherb and I had this conversation yesterday. One of the reasons why it's so top of mind and it basically makes a lot of sense for this episode too, is he was asking how much of my cool down do I need to do when I'm going into the sauna after to get the benefits of extending my workout. Problem with the sauna is, yes, we are clearing waste through our blood, but there's no muscle contractions. So still, I would probably do if it was me, I would probably do the 4-4-4 instead of the 5-5-5 and then go up in there. And then, like I am keeping, an even more elevated heart rate, which is nice. And
that's what I ended up doing was 12 minutes. I jogged for about 4, and then that jog turned into a really fast walk, turned into slowly walking. And then, I had turned the sauna on early enough that like basically once that was done, grab a bottle of water and head upstairs. And again, I'm glad that you told me that, because I was again thinking about, does it make sense to try to cool down to then create stress again? But to make sure that waste isn't in my legs today, so that, hopefully perform while I'm training today. I'm not feeling yesterday's, what I would say is not a super hard run, but still when you run for about an hour, that's an hour of accumulated waste and metabolic, breakdown that can occur. So anything to make sure that you get most of the benefit without much of the side effects is kind of the main reason why cooling down is so important. It's to give you all the benefits without having it linger for longer than necessary. It's no different than someone like feeling good on week 1 of the blog and doing every single piece and then wondering why week 3 they can't move. It's like, well, you didn't think about how the rest of the phase was going to go when you were just worrying about this one single thing. And that can kind of be extrapolated into a day of training. If you push all of your effort into one and you're like, great, I'm done. And then you try to come back and do something a little bit later and you didn't cool down. You wonder why you feel so terrible. It's because you didn't give your body that chance.
As far as like a practical application goes too, you can think about this anytime that you have an interval sort of training piece where during your rest period, we encourage you to like pedal slowly on a bike or keep moving and keep walking. It's the same idea. You jack your heart rate up, jack up your like the muscle contraction, the waste that's accumulating. We want you to continue to flush that out by moving, by using muscle contraction to keep blood pumping. And then similarly, like imagine you're doing like an assault bike sprint workout, like a really gnarly workout where you've got the hydrogen building up from the lactic acid like process and whatnot. It's like those first few seconds in your next sprint, actually you start to feel better. Like it's almost like the leg poison goes away for a few seconds before it starts ramping back up. It's the same idea. Like you start to recontract muscle tissue, all of a sudden everything starts to circulate a little bit better. You feel a little bit better. You've reopened a lane on the highway. But once you stop, like if you stop moving, you close down a lane with the same amount of traffic that's trying to get through there.
Funny you say that. We had that just in Team Misfit on the Hatchet Extra the other day, was an AMRAP of 24 minutes in teams of 4, switching 500 meters on the fan bike over and over again.
That's
and everyone was doing it and they're like, it's fucking weird. I've never had a workout where the biking's the easy part or I feel the best. How come I'm biking and I feel better? And as soon as it's over, I feel horrible. And it's like,
didn't finish the curve.
Do me a favor. Do one more. Do it again when it's your turn. Do your round, and then as soon as you get done, start walking. Don't stop and just sit there, because that's what like most people do. It's like I've given all I got, Bob. I'm gonna sit down now because I've done my turn. Like, don't do this time. Walk, and then I would like, oh, weird. Starting to not be as bad during my rest period, and it's exactly what you're describing here. Is you're teaching someone that like you keep that contraction going, keep that blood pumping high. You're gonna actually feel better than if you just sit there dormant.
All those coaches out there listening to this, you earn their trust, and then you just take these little bites like that. It's not always you got to do this. This is the prescription, especially at the affiliate level. You earn that trust through, hey, keep getting fitter, huh? Keep getting fitter, huh? Like, make a nod to that, and then it's you got to walk, get up and walk, get up and go do that. I think everybody at some point has had this moment. For me, it was super early CrossFit days, so following.com's always one workout a day. But you started to see the videos of the games athletes doing multiple workouts in a day. And you're like, what the fuck are they doing? How is that possible? It's so funny to think back too, because like most affiliate level athletes do more than one workout a day now. It's just such a different landscape. But what was crazy about it was, okay, so they're doing regionals or they're doing the CrossFit games are coming up. And that's typically when people would try to mimic what was going on the other side. So we would have the .com workout, and maybe we'd have to go like run 400s or something. And then we'd decide, okay, we're going to do this regionals workout that's got like the lunges or something in it. Mm-hmm. And the intensity was so much different back then. You tried to die with every .com workout, because one workout a day, mixing in some lifting days. Like, it was a bit more appropriate to really go that hard. So you're like trying to eat in between, and it's like a, you know, a weekend during the summer. So it's a little bit more hot out back then. You don't know a damn thing about nutrition, hydration, any of that. So there's no cool
Too
down.
busy carb backloading.
Frosties.
And you go, and that first walking lunge step that you take, it's worse than delayed onset muscle soreness because it's literally the same
Like
muscle soreness.
Like a well done steak that's been
Oh my, it is unreal what that's like.
Take a chunk out of it. It's like, yeah.
And the
good.
interpretation of whoever's going through this, everyone can still find that moment. Like they could go, you know, you guys could go next door and do 4 pieces or whatever. And then it's time to bike. It's time to do the C2 bike, you know, localized muscle fatigue. And you know what that's going to feel like.
Sick.
Right? Like, but there's just always this insinuation, like I don't recover well. I'm not that fit. I haven't really gotten to this level yet. Post 400s, jog for 5 minutes, jog slower for 5 minutes, walk for 5 minutes. And I probably wouldn't have felt anything in that lunge afterwards. So when you're working through this stuff and you're asking yourself, how many fucking times do I actually have to do this? Like we try to get athletes to do it almost too much so they understand the benefits from it, and then they can figure out when and where to add it in. But like you can completely change what you get out of every piece with this, and then obviously not like lie in bed at night and feel your heartbeat in your quads the whole night.
I mean, again, another really great way to describe this too is that like there's a full industry on how to recover from things. There's people who sell hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars in equipment, which again, for a high level athlete might be a nice augment to how you're recovering from your training. But like if there was a barrier to entry of like, just try for another like 10 to 15 minutes and you won't need most of these things and you don't have to spend all that money, wouldn't you want to do that so you can train harder the next day? Because the way that you get a leg up on your competitors is by pushing harder and harder and having that ability to go to that place over and over again. But the only thing that's going to allow you to go to that place over and over again is doing what feels like unnecessary work that's not that hard for 10 to 15 minutes after a piece.
I mean, if you're somebody who's like, well, yeah, I got the stim, I got the cupping set, I got the Graston tool, I got all this stuff that I'm going to do at home. Like I'm going to go, like I foam roll for 20 minutes before I go to bed or whatever. Like those are all terrific recovery protocols, but like what you're trying to do is the same thing that would occur if you cool down. If you take
those
the time
have to be stacked on the basics.
Those have to be the basics are the warm up and cool down. Just like getting your nutrition and your sleep dialed in before you decide to go buy a $6,000 cold tub. Like you got to be willing to do the warm up, do the correct things in the warm up and cool down. And then we can talk about getting you the $3,000 Normatec boots because you need enhanced recovery,
right,
or something like that. But if you're like, so many of these things are just like minimal barrier to entry and people just kind of scoff at them. Like it's just like, yep, warm up and cool down are just words on a paper when they actually can have significant impact on you for basically no cost.
And the pros, what's happening there is, one, they're selling those things. You know what I mean? Part of the way that they make their living is by selling that stuff. But they've also figured out through things like warming up and cooling down and activations and accessory work and sleep and nutrition and all that, they've learned how to be in the 99th percentile. And then some of them want to be 99.1 to 100. And that's when they figure out the boots and the supplements and all these different things. But without that, like, the person exists that ends up in gym fail videos that has thousands of dollars worth of things that they hope just turn them into someone. And obviously that's just such a kind of like a backwards way of thinking about how that all works. Next up on the list is active rest days and rest days. This is an important topic because it's different for different athletes.
I went on a 20-mile hike. It was my rest day.
So we recommend
rested. It was just 20 miles.
At least one day. And this is true, I would say, for 99 out of 100 athletes. At least one rest day a week where you don't get on a machine. You don't, like, I still on rest days will tell athletes I want a dedicated 10,000 steps with nasal breathing or whatever, that sort of thing. But like no CrossFit at all for at least one day a week. Some athletes need that twice a week, but some athletes do better with, I have one who does a Maffetone and a swim session on the same day. he's done nothing. He's done just a swim, just a Maffetone. He feels better, trains better, has better scores, sleeps better, all that based on doing that. So it's something that he's figured out for an active rest protocol. So you can find out what works for you based on objective data. Like everyone in this room is either wearing a Whoop or, a Garmin, the type of thing that tells you what your stress levels look like, what your sleep scores look like, all of that. That's when that data can be important. How do you retest something like this? Like, I'm pretty sure I feel better. Our sport is not, okay, I hit 14 3-pointers in a row today. I obviously am mentally acute. No, we've given you something you've never done before again. So you trying to figure out, was this a good day for me, is probably not the most objective thing in the world. So going back to those tools and saying, okay, I wrote out 6 active rest day protocols over the course of a phase. I want to have them completely dialed in by quarterfinals time. I don't know, man, this seems to be the one. This seems to be the thing. And, you can figure out how you're reverse engineering that whole day and not just how you're moving, but you should know what works best for you personally. Man, especially when it's not one of your training days. You do not need to mimic other people on those days. You need to get ideas from them and then figure out what works best for you.
Yeah, I think the shiny object watching Instagram on the rest day is one of the worst things that ever happened to an athlete, because you get there and you're thinking that you're not doing what you should be doing when in fact you are doing what you need to be doing. Like, I think one of the
What do you mean by that?
I'm just saying, I think when an athlete gets to a rest day, typically that allows them more time to be on social media, which then becomes an infinity scroll of like, oh, this person that I admire does this on this day. This person does this thing on their day. And all of a sudden you're
more opportunities to think you're missing out on
exactly
something.
That exercise FOMO occurs and you're like, you know what? I saw so-and-so did.
Despite the fact that you have no fucking idea what that person's doing.
Correct. And again, that's because that's what it is. It's a snapshot.
When that person
life.
did it, when it was like, oh, that was from 3 months ago.
It's like, look, Vellner decided to do a bunch of toes to bar and dumbbell squat cleans on his rest day. And it's like, I don't think that was his rest day. Even if he wrote that, he might be just fucking with you. And don't take that for verbatim. But
you can do like 200 toes to bar in a row too. I don't think those mean the same thing to you as it does to him.
So again, I think that's one pitfall that happens to an athlete. And in fact, I think one of the best things that kind of stokes the fire for an athlete to go back in the gym and give it all. And I think this is something you do really well, Hunter, is that like you'll take a day away from the gym and maybe I'll go surfing, or fuck, I won't go surfing. I'll just not be at the gym for a day. And that allows you to come back in and pour full effort and intensity. And again, people don't realize that battery that you have, whether you look on a 1-day snapshot, a 7-day snapshot, a phase snapshot, or an entire year, is constantly being drained and refueled, drained and refueled, and drained and refueled. And you need to make sure that you are giving your body ample time to actually fully recharge. Otherwise, when you come back and you think you're at 100%, you're more like 85%. And that fourth set of the 6x10 walking lunges that could have been at 225 is now at 195. And while that might not seem like a big deal for one day, let's say you do that for an entire phase and you leave, 30,000 pounds of total accumulated weight left off the table just because you refuse to take one day of like, all right, I can get out of the gym. What does that do to your fitness? Well, it effectively lowers your ceiling for how fit you could be, because again, you never allowed yourself the chance to recharge so you could get to your ceiling.
I think it's important to kind of you have to think about your entire year in context as well, right? So if you like super motivated for the first 3 months and you're just like, I'm in the gym 7 days a week, like I'm getting better. One, you're not enabling your body to recover. Like rest day, you are getting fitter during rest days. You are getting less fit while you're exercising. We're breaking tissue down. You're stressing your body intentionally while you're exercising.
I think anyone actually believes that. Do you think we believe it?
I don't. Yeah, I do. I fucking believe it. I'm gonna take a rest. I'll take 6 rest days in a row. I don't give a shit.
So fit now.
So fit. I'm gonna be so fit in a week after not doing dog shit.
Hear me out. Nothing.
But you like
Misfit nothing.
What happened? What happens? What happens when you hit that point where you're just like, fuck, I don't want to train, and you go through a week period of that where it's just like, this sucks. I don't even know why I'm doing this anymore. That sort of thing. It's like, was that worth it? For like, you hate yourself, you're burnt out.
Yeah,
kind of ironic.
You know you were stacking pieces of straw on your back the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. So just trying to, taking that rest day, taking the opportunity to get outside the gym so that you are fired up to go into the gym again. Because again, you're making yourself stronger by taking that rest day, not by stacking additional stress on top of your already stressful training schedule. Yeah.
I do want to address Maffetone really quickly. I mean, there's no way. There's no way you don't know what I'm talking about if you're listening to this podcast.
All right, fine. I'll do Maffetone on my rest.
40 to 90 minutes of steady state cardio at a heart rate of 180 minus your age. There's way more to it. Find it somewhere else. From us, though, obviously. But this is one of the ones where it's like, okay, so I can be getting fitter on a cardiovascular level. I can be manipulating my slow twitch musculature, which either makes me have more endurance, clear waist better,
recover better,
supporting musculature so I don't get injuries, and I can be recovering simultaneously. That's a tough one to wrap your minds around, but depending on whether the rest of your volume is appropriate or not, that is very true. Like I personally, I'll go completely against everything that we're saying on here so far, but I typically work out mostly for mental health and longevity. Those are my two main goals. I do best working out 7 days a week. It's low volume. So it's basically, the things that you are putting into those days that are removed from my non-rest days makes your volume still way higher than mine. Yeah. So it's not like, but I personally do best when it comes to that. And then whatever, a couple times a month, like when I'm healthy, it's like very clear that that's not the right move on like a single day. Like
But you listen to that, right?
Exactly.
But then you listen to it.
It's kind of like what you were talking about last time in the last episode. Basically, like you allow yourself occasionally to have a day, but you try to avoid doubling up. Like you don't want to have 2 days in a row where you feel like you're completely inactive because then you come back the third day and you're like...
Start telling yourself the wrong story
exactly,
when you're doing multiple days in a row.
Yeah, and I think there's plenty of wiggle room because there's a pretty wide spectrum of I'm doing 4 to 6 training pieces per day. Then maybe one day is justifiably like... don't even look at the gym. Yep. If you're someone like us, or probably more like you and I now, it's like sorry, nerd, you could take a rest day, late idiot. But if it's like for the mental health or for sleep, it's like there is a bit of a trade-off. It's like, okay, so maybe like in the very, very long term, I don't necessarily need this training day, but I know that I'm going to sleep better.
Yep.
And like, again, our definition of a training day is probably significantly different than a lot of the people listening, where it's like, a single Maffetone session on a working day is like, yep, that's training. That's not recovery for me. That's a training day. Other days it's like 6x10 lunges with, some GHDs in between or something. It's like, that's a training day for me. So maybe 7 days a week is fine. I think we're talking to two different populations at that point. So yes.
Last thing I want to cover with the rest days is just reiterating non-exercise movement, even at the highest levels. I don't like the concept of, it might be one of your only days to truly express the fact that you're a human being if you're a high level competitor. So one of the ways that you can do that is you can go outside and walk, you can be outdoors. The lymphatic system's going to work great. You get your entire body is involved with walking. It works wonders for your brain. Bring a human being along with you, maybe even a non-CrossFitter. I don't know if you know any, but if you do, bring one of them with you on a walk. I don't know. Talk about fucking mac and cheese recipes. I don't know what
lobster mac and cheese.
Lobster on the side.
They can't touch.
The red can't touch the orange. We've already talked about this.
Whoa. Over here, bro.
Take it easy. Put the lips.
If the red is the orange.
You're red and orange. Keep the lips to yourself.
It's my patchiness.
Anyways, non-exercise movement, super important even for high-level CrossFitters.
And red orange boys.
Red orange boys. Don't let them touch. Like Flamin' Hots and regular Cheetos. You can't mix those. Static stretching.
Never heard of it.
Definitely mixing that. Would you just call me?
I'm actually going to read from this. Let's see what I wrote. Identify where you're at on the spectrum within the main movers and do something about it. For me, this is so easy. It's an air squat, a couple of push-ups, maybe a handstand hold, that kind of thing. I think more athletes need to understand how to audit how they're feeling, especially the ones who think that it's normal to be kind of sore all the time. So like put yourself through different ranges of motion with body weight gymnastics exercises, or if that's not enough for you, if you're, the best of the best, grab a pair of dumbbells and do the same thing, deadlift it, then power clean it, then front squat it, then put it over your head, then do some lunges, whatever. that to me is how you can start to develop something where your static stretches are actually targeted to what's going on with your body. Because there's definitely a difference between mobility demands, soreness, like what are we currently in the volume cycle for back squatting? Or are you doing a lot of handstand push-ups as weakness work right now? So that I think is how someone, for the most part, is going to make serious changes to their actual mobility. I think we overcorrected as a community when K-Star showed up and showed us all of these ways where we could potentially identify injury and restore sliding surfaces, these incredible tools that are part of a toolbox and not the entire toolbox. When I've personally made any mobility changes, I've identified a position that I can't get into, and then I've done a lot of static stretching to allow myself, or holds, if you want to call it that, to get myself into those positions. And it is really boring and a lot of work, and one of those things where the chains of habit are too weak. It's really hard to force yourself to do 5 or 6 stretches, 3 minutes per side when that's not part of your routine. It's boring. It's just not, like, it takes a while. But what's good about it is once you've started to fix it, the time domains aren't as long, it doesn't bother you as much, and it becomes more about maintaining where you're at versus having to make serious changes.
And a lot of people think this, we're talking like, hey, it takes 5 years of static stretching, for an hour a day to create change. And
it just feels like 5 years in the 3 minutes.
It sure does. I'm speaking from personal experience now, like little as 3 weeks, the positions that used to be excruciating for more than 30 seconds are now easy. And now it's like, can I hold for a minute? Can I hold it for a minute and a half? And instead of this mobility stretching session taking, 30 minutes to accomplish, it's now like a 10-minute routine. And
you think Maffetone's boring? Try stretching.
Boy, we're really selling this. but for real though, like one of the things we
really
love
gonna like Misfit Athletics. You can sit on a bike and do almost nothing for 45 minutes. You're gonna sit in the bottom of an air squat for 10 minutes a day.
But the idea here though of being able to then go back to a barbell and snatch more weight is exciting for everybody, even if that means you have to sit in the bottom of an overhead squat with a fucking training bar for 15-second segments until you accumulate 7 minutes. Like the work ahead of it sometimes is hard to see the benefit down the road, but the first day that you go in and you go to snatch and all of a sudden you don't have to pull the bar as high, and weights that used to feel heavy and cumbersome are now super easy, that is proof of concept. So one of the things that I have identified is that holding a squat is terrible. I have super wide feet, my knees barely track out, my hips are super tight, and then like things like a front squat or overhead squats are don't even.
You're strong as fuck, and in a lot of cases you can't use it.
Exactly, and that's what's giving me access to my strength. And it's one of the things that we've been talking about is that like mobility is access to strength. In order to be able to express how strong you are and all the work that you put in, you need to be able to get in the most advantageous position. Otherwise, you are going to be showing a percentage of your absolute strength, your absolute capacity. So, it's a really, really effective way to see benefit. But it does take a little bit of patience, and that, sort of like Maffetone at first might feel like this incredibly boring thing where the only way you can get through it is if you put on a movie. And like, if that's the first time you do a Maffetone sessions, you have to watch a movie to do it. Awesome. Eventually you won't feel that way. Eventually you'll become something that you're desensitized to, and you can just do it on a whim and you actually enjoy the thing. But, at this point, if you're adverse to it, be patient a little bit and you'll notice the benefits right away. And I'm talking like as little as 3 weeks to start to know the benefits.
Yeah. Yep. Anything else on the old static stretching?
I think like what you were saying is there are plenty of resources. I think you could Google online. Like after seeing an athletic trainer that really helped me with some knee issues, he gave me basically takes like 5 to 8 minutes or so to go through like kind of a head to toe, like range of motion mobility little protocol. So a lot of times, sometimes I'll do it before, but a lot of times after I do like my machine based warm up, and it's basically just kind of like head to toe up things from like literally just turning your head side to side to like
took class through today, right?
Yeah, I take class through some of it sometimes, and then like some hip opening stuff and whatnot. But it's basically like, he explained it. He was like, this is like a check-in for you. It's like, go through all this thing, and like you're basically kind of hitting check boxes and are just like, nope, that feels good. That feels good. Nope. Why is my knee bother me when I do this movement? Okay, like we need to revisit this after we finish this protocol. And in some instances, it's a static stretching thing, especially if we get a lot of athletes who come from like, let's say a running background, and it's like their version of bending over and touching their toes is like getting into a squat because their hamstrings are so tight. They don't even want to like hinge forward at the waist. And it's like, that's an instance where I'm like, you need to just do a standing hamstring stretch for like 5 minutes a day. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to even get into a correct deadlift setup position. And all of a sudden, now it's like, well, why does my back hurt? It's like, well, because you're compensating for something because you either didn't warm it up well enough, you didn't activate it well enough, or you just don't have the access to that range of motion to do the movement correctly, so your body compensates.
I think the only thing to add to that, Drew, is something you've said before, and I think is an important concept. Kind of, if we go back to the K-Star comment a minute ago about like removing maybe static stretching from your toolbox, I mean, that's definitely a part of your routine. I'd just recommend that most people consider doing a lot of that static stretching kind of at the tail end of their session when tissues are already really, really warm, and that their bodies be more receptive to the static stretching. Not to say you can't do it ahead of training, but you'll find a lot of athletes find that when you do lengthen a muscle ahead of training, you sort of feel weaker and you can't recruit the same amount of.
A lot of athletes also get injured.
Yeah,
static stretching
that's from an application standpoint. You should be listening. Like, unless you're incredibly tight in some place, like static stretching is going to reduce your ability to generate force. So like you said, afterward, while your tissues are still warm is great time to do it, or even like before bed as part of like a down regulation kind of protocol is beneficial as well. A lot of folks like to do SugarWOD before they go to bed. And so
you can feel like you're making a change in a day if you get done a really sweaty workout and you've done your cool down and you do static stretching. It really makes a like really big difference.
It's like if that's the only time you can get into certain positions, it's just like, oh, I can actually, my hips touch the floor when I do a pigeon pose because my tissues are so warm. It's like, holy fuck, like good job identifying that. Keep doing it. Do it again, especially if you're somebody who's already tight in positions that would benefit.
I think one of the reasons why we overcorrected, and I do say we, including us, is there's this idea that like, oh, the yogi isn't strong, and you're hypermobile if you can get into really good positions. And it's like, well, they also don't lift. Like, there might be a reason why. You know who's really strong is people who can get into great positions and are strong.
Do you guys know Tolo Marquinho? Might be the most flexible human being I know, and also the strongest.
When I watch some fucking brute show up at the gym and squat somewhere near parallel, stop, turn around and stand a heavy weight up, I have no fucking clue what is happening and how it's even possible that they do that. Like, no stretch reflex, nothing. Like, this is how I lift. This is how I've had to lift. So whatever. Give that person a little bouncy bounce, a little stretch reflex, a little end range of motion.
10% more.
Oh my God. How much weight could they lift? Like, that's what I see when I see that. I'm like, I'm glad that this has forced you to create these insanely like good movers, but you don't have access to, maybe 15 to 20% of your strength. You really don't. You're not even able to go there. So if you're that person, if you're that person, figure out how to get into that position.
Want to get 10% stronger?
Yeah, seriously. All right. So to make sure that it doesn't seem like we're trashing like lacrosse balls and foam rollers and voodoo floss and, band distraction and all this other stuff, it's the next thing on the list. It's just a different thing about what's going on. What's hard in terms of talking about it and giving mass prescriptions is they're typically things that we're trying to pinpoint, like on our own personal level. So this would be like a 2 or 3 part episode on its own. How could you possibly manipulate the fibers in your foot and your calf? How do you knee pain? Got all this different stuff. So this part of that toolbox is incredibly important. And, the good thing is I think there are convenient times for all of it. So we said post-workout, static stretch. Soft tissue work is awesome at night because there's some cascading hormone benefits from, like, if you're in a dark room and you're foam rolling and you're, really kind of breathing into it and relaxing a little bit, you're releasing hormones that are sort of letting you know, like, I want to downregulate, I want to calm down. So there are places for all of this stuff. And a lot of the mobility, stability, prehab, rehab, a lot of that goes really well in your pre-workout as well. Yep. Getting yourself again into those, sort of more, I would say more active positions. So let's say you love a You love like a hamstring stretch. You can do some of the band work where you would get into, I believe it's seated straddles, the wide seated straddle. You hook a band up to a pull-up rig and you pull yourself down into what would be the stretch. And then as you pull back up, you're pulling on the band to sort of do almost like a rowing like motion. I'm not sure if that translates visually.
It didn't.
So you're the
I'm following out.
That's fine. I'm 50% of the listeners. You're the other 50%.
The post on the pull-up rig has a band on it.
Yeah.
So when you reach forward with the band, it's loosened.
Yeah.
And then you activate to pull back up into your seated position.
An activation.
Exactly.
Thing.
Yeah. So it's not that
you
have
in the bottom
to
of the squat.
No, you're in seated straddle.
Seat on the floor.
So you're in that seated straddle.
Okay.
The way you would stretch would be to go down, but you're just going down, hitting that spot, and then activating to come back up. So we don't need to get rid of the general concept of my hamstrings are tight, but we need to add something in that's going to get you into a place where you're working your low back, you're working your midline,
contract,
you're doing
relaxed style of stretching is super effective, especially like is that basically what you're saying? Like,
sort of, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Similar idea.
Yeah.
All right.
There are a lot of trainers out there now who are adding resistance to their stretching so that it's sort of active and not these long moments where, again, we're sort of loosening that rubber band before we go.
Yeah.
That sort of deal. So again, there's not an excellent way for us to break down every single thing that you can be doing right now, but all of those things that a lot of you have been doing, that K-Star talks about, that knees over toes guy talks about, that we talk about, that we put into our programming, activation protocols, extremely important. Just know what the tool is for. Really great to help you warm up, really great to go at the end of your day. You know, you want to be useful while you're, binging Seinfeld or whatever, like lay on the ground and get those mobility tools out and get after it.
At the end of camp, my kind of final thoughts were to the group was to try to be a student of the game. And what I meant in the specific context of that comment was like, hey, unless you have like a remote coach or a coach that is like assigned to you specifically, you've got to figure out a lot of this on your own. And this is what we did before Misfit Athletics became a more prominent thing. It was just the willingness, and most of it's because we're just all interested in that sort of thing. But being a student of the game, being somebody who is willing to experiment with like, okay, I'm going to sit my piriformis on this lacrosse ball and see what happens. Oh, it turns out I can get into a better squat position. Like, that seems useful information to pass along to the community. A lot of that stuff you guys have to be willing to kind of dig into, figure out what works best for you. And especially when it comes to the mobility thing, I would say that is probably the number one thing that if someone comes to me and is just like, hey, like I want to get better at X, Y, and Z, and especially if I've coached them before and I can visualize like what their movement looks like, I'll be like, I know exactly what your problem is.
Right.
Like you've never seen the bottom of a squat in your life. Like, so we need to get you stronger there. We need to figure out how to get you there. And sometimes it's as easy as, here's my recommendation, sit in the bottom of a squat for 10 minutes a day. Do it sporadically throughout the day. Do it all at once, however you want. You need to find time. You need to spend time, as K-Star says, in the position of restriction. Like,
right.
Get yourself in that position, mobilize, move around, gain access to those positions so that you can develop strength in those positions, and your fitness is going to skyrocket.
Again, going back to camp, can't we do this every single time we have an ollie session where you make someone sit in the bottom of a front squat and overhead squat? And it's like, who here hates this? And like everybody's hand shoots up. It's like, all right, also keep your hand up if you'd like to snatch more weight. Oh wait, they're the exact same group. Fooled you. Here's the remedy. Get yourself strong down there.
It's just this like highly technical, part magical movement, and you want to hate one part of just sitting there doing nothing associated with it.
Put your arms over your head and you wonder why this movement sucks. Like, fuck.
I know why.
Yeah, I got an idea.
All right. Last but not least, and it's last on purpose because it's a wazi, it's a woozy. Actually, maybe we can explain how it does land on the elemental chart. Stress management.
Nope.
How can you pay attention to it, and how is it measured? Paying attention to it is a skill that develops over time. People do not realize that their normal can be bad because it is their normal and it is how they feel, and this is life. And then either you make a change and you get that black and white comparison, or like with me personally, the when I was doing the marathon training, I don't know if I've told the listeners that I screwed my knee up, but when I was doing that, the level of stress and anxiety the rest of the day after a long run in the morning, I was like, is this how people feel? Am I now elevated? Like I don't have like how
enlightened.
Like you're now that fucking loser who went for a run in the morning.
Completely different human being all day. Like I haven't run now in a month and I fucking miss running. And I don't know how that's possible.
Fucking 25-year-old Drew would punch you in the face.
Loser. I'm going to go get him. Bring him in here.
God, he'd be so triggered.
Hey, punch this guy in the throat.
Look, waits and he runs all the time.
How skinny he is.
Dude hasn't snatched in 5 months, 5 years.
So yeah, those are the ways that certain things can happen, but just want to put out there, don't make the assumption that because you're assuming that this is my normal, that it's okay or optimal. It's probably not the case for a lot of people. This is where the whole sort of Whoop or wearable or whatever conversation comes into play, but I want to be really careful about it. I like with my Garmin, basically instead of getting a specific HRV number, I have a body battery, and it tells me how much it's charged on a scale of 0 to 100. And then it can go up or down during the day, whether I'm relaxing or stressed out or whatever. And then obviously training has something to do with it. You guys with your Whoop, you get the direct HRV score, and you just have to know that your HRV score is personalized. Like
it's relative to you.
Don't share scores with your HRV. It's just not what's relevant. What's relevant is the change in the numbers that you're used to. That's why I like
Wyndham main heart rate, resting heart rate.
That's why I prefer
64.
That's why I prefer the body battery score, because it does that the algorithm, the computer takes care of that, and all I know is in relation to myself, sort of how that looks. When we first started using these tools, one of the issues was some of our more like cerebral athletes that were looking for these tricks and tips or whatever would wake up, see their score, and it would ruin their training for the rest of the day.
Yep.
Now, I'm hoping we are past that as a community, and you realize some days body battery 100, score in the workout 0. Some days body battery 30, score in the workout 100. And there's a lot of factors that could go into that. There's a lot of human psychology that can go into that. So there are multiple suggestions here. One of the things that you can do is not look until later, not look until you're done. The other thing is make it fun, make it video game-like. You're staring at a screen with fake numbers that may or may not be accurate or whatever. Don't put all of your eggs in that basket. It's incredible that we're telling a phone to tell us how we feel. That is fucking insane. You're the most complex thing ever created. Who knows how you were created? We won't get into that.
Whoa, it's a new podcast now.
Yeah, new podcast. But
right, Ted?
Like, there's nothing more impressive than the human body and the human brain. Nothing's been invented that is like, it's not even, there's no way to compare it. So you thinking that with the tools that you have personally, that your phone is going to be able to tell you otherwise is pretty silly, right? Yeah. So that gamification means I want to tell athletes, I'm already telling you how much you have to train. And if you want to train less, you need to meet with me. We got to figure this out. So you not training is not on the table unless we agree to it together. So that means you are gamifying this and seeing, how do I get a high score? What do I do? What is it on this whole list that we've talked about? I changed something about my sleep. High score. Change something about my nutrition. I played around with macronutrient splits or how many calories I'm getting. High score. Hot and cold. High score or low score. Like that. This is also important. You listen to a recovery protocol that we talked about, but we've also said if you stack all of them together, it's not so excellent for you. Like low score, pay attention to that same thing, but gamify it and just be like, what behaviors can I do from the whole spectrum to get me to get a higher score on this?
Do you use the journal feature on your Whoop? Do you journal every morning?
I used to. I haven't used that journal feature for a while. I mean, I think that's another reason why. And I think that one of the points of this conversation about stress and the Whoop specifically is that, like, you know, if you go on Discord, you might think that I hate Whoop, and like somehow they
why would they think that?
They insulted my family somehow, and I'm getting back at them through my little like chirping on Discord. But the idea here is, again, I think there are more effective ways to track your activity. I think some of them are intuitive, and I think there are better metrics for how you are exerting yourself in the gym. But if the Whoop creates better habits for you, healthier habits for you, habits that improve the way you are able to train, then you should continue to use it. So, for example,
I think that's the majority of what it was intended for.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, the idea of like, all right, it's making me aware that I slept 6.1 hours last night and I tried to train for 6.1 hours yesterday. So those two things aren't in alignment. Or, I've noticed a trend in the last 5 days. My HRV's been low. Am I stressed at work? Am I not sleeping well? Am I getting sick? These are things that I think the Whoop is very, very valuable for creating a better set of habits. I just don't want it to run someone's life. And I also don't want someone to get too wrapped up in the fact that like, oh, cool, Hunter's strain was 17.1 and mine was 16.1. So he worked out harder than me today. And that's like not what that thing's about at all.
Yeah, I think as maybe the initial shitter honor of Whoop.
Shitter honor.
It was like very frustrating to see like be looking like you wanted to ultimately like all I was interested in is like how hard did I actually seem to work in this workout? That workout really sucked. Like, was my heart rate as high as I think it is, or are we maybe missing the mark here, thinking that like a workout is more intense than it is? And it was frustrating when you compare it with a chest strap, even though like no one anywhere claims that like a wrist worn wearable is going to be more accurate than a chest strap. But it's, I think to your point, like the value in something like that is, especially the reason I asked about the journal thing is like, I don't know of any other product that you can that has like, I don't know, like 1,000 different behaviors where you can say, I did this yesterday. I did that. I didn't do that. I did this. Like I give myself like a 7 out of 10 on doing this. Nope, I didn't do that. Yes, I did that. And like, if you continue to log that information, like the weekly and monthly performance assessments, like that's just aggregated data. Like what you're paying for with Whoop is the proprietary recovery kind of formula, whatever algorithm they use to produce that. And then the fact that you are telling Whoop that this is what you did yesterday, this, that, and the other thing. Okay, well, here's just the objective data that you gave us, and here's a consolidated report on what that means for you. Do whatever you want with it, but here's the data. And if people are, if you're using it primarily to just stare at the heart rate feature, it's like, one, you better have a good idea of what you intend that to be. And if you're going to complain about it, like, well, at least compare it to something. Because a lot of people are like, my heart rate's too low. And it's like, well, did you do a manual heart rate reading? Like you can do that, right? Like, you can do that. So it's people understanding what the tool is for and what the most practical and useful application of it is to help you.
I'll give you a theory as a business owner. You have two sides to that company. I'm lumping a lot of things together. You have the side that's associated with, you have an executive team, sales team, marketing team. And then you have the product team, which is going to have your engineers and is going to have your like connection from the guy who can write the algorithm to how could this help an athlete, right? If you were able to get a non-public response from the product team about why they created this thing and what it's for, I think you could have a serious conversation with them about their product and they would understand. If you're going to have a conversation with a X number $1 billion company, they're not going to say that the heart rate while your arm is moving isn't going to work very well. That technology doesn't exist yet on any wearable. It doesn't exist on my fucking $12 trillion Garmin.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. It's better on the Apple Watch, but it's not great. So just understanding what the tool is for and not getting sucked into, who are they paying to say what, like all that different stuff. There are definite benefits to the Whoop. I just, for personal reasons, like to have my watch and my, heart rate thing and all of that and the Whoop type stuff built into one device.
Doesn't like two straps. It's too many.
I don't either. I agree. I mean, that's part of the reason I bought the Apple Watch was almost exclusively so that I go on a Maffetone run.
Right.
I can do this, look at my wrist instead of pull a phone out of my pocket, stare at the Whoop thing for a second, put it back in my pocket and keep running. So Yeah, I think it's just knowing what the tool is used for, what it's intended to be. Like, what are you paying for? Are you going to pay $30 a month indefinitely for a heart rate monitor? It's like, probably not. You could buy one of those outright for like $50 if you want to. You're with the Whoop specifically. Again, you're purchasing the proprietary algorithm that does the super unique recovery score, the strain score. Like, Garmin's got the body battery, like obviously all kind of a similar idea,
Right.
but that's ultimately what you're paying for. That and the fact that they provide you with all of that, again, kind of aggregated data for you to do what you want with it. So if you're not using all of the features for that and you're upset about the inaccuracy of a wrist-worn heart rate monitor, it's like you're confused about what you're...
Everyone
what
listening
you're
has a
angry about.
smartphone, and the chest straps are not expensive, and those are a specific tool for a specific thing. That's the absolute best way to use it. And like, if someone came to me and asked what I recommend for them to wear, because they do want to wear something, I'm not saying everybody needs to wear this stuff. Like, I would have to ask them from like a financial perspective. Like, the Whoop costs a certain amount. I don't know how much it costs, but it's like $20 or $30 a month.
It's like 30 a month.
I think you pay like 200 something for the year. Is like, you can do an annual membership,
right?
And it breaks down to like 20 some odd bucks.
That probably sounds a lot more enticing than an $800 to $1,000 watch,
right?
So it depends on the person, and then as you go down the line with Garmin, there's features on watches that aren't on other watches. So like, as they make updates, you might tell somebody, "Hey, go buy one," and they're like, "I bought the whatever $400 version. It doesn't do any of the shit that you're talking about. What the hell?" Yeah. So like, yes, I do recommend it and would recommend it to people who want to try something out and are kind of okay with spending that much money on a watch. But
it's like, do your research is basically what you're saying.
Yeah,
just make sure that when you're considering one of these tools that you do the due diligence and you don't just get, again, not to say that like everyone's goldfishing, gets distracted by shiny objects, but like, take a second to really look into what you're trying to get from it, because that can ultimately inform whether or not you want to buy a $300 Apple Watch, pay $30 a month for a Whoop, or you want to invest in something that's a little bit more expensive than that. Again, just do your research.
The last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to stress management is, we've talked about trying to figure out how to monitor it, what sort of recovery protocols could gamify the score. And then there's just going back to things like the hot and the cold, to the exercises, maybe introducing some breathing practices. I've done, long periods of time where I've done a few rounds of Wim Hof every morning. I've done periods of time where I've meditated in the morning. So the two ideas here are: do something stressful to then delay the stress response. Same concept as you do your Maffetone and you delay when we tick over from anaerobic or aerobic to anaerobic. And the more you put yourself in stressful situations on purpose in a controlled dose, the more your body is not going to react to those things. So you can literally be in the sauna long enough or the cold long enough to where the next time a stressful situation happens in your personal life, you don't click into that fight or flight mode quite as fast. When it comes to the breathing side of things, on the other side of the coin, understanding your physiology and knowing that you can manipulate it by, again, just going back to being a human and not getting sucked into all of this crazy new shit that our bodies don't understand. Sit on a park bench, breathe through your nose for a while, and then go, that was dumb. Like that sort of thing. So I just making sure that you know how to sort of work at it and delay the stress response, but also when you're in the shit, you can manipulate your own physiology in the moment.
This reminds me of the conversation you said, I don't know, it must have been a couple of months back at the affiliate class, Hunter, just like, if you're just coming here for an hour exercise, you're kind of missing out on a lot of what we offer or what you could gain from affiliate class. And the concept of, this exercise is a supreme stress, and it teaches your body that like, if you go to affiliate class and you can deal with a really terrible Metcon, there are other things that happen in your life that are corollaries to like the discomfort and the difficulty you feel in an affiliate class. You can then extrapolate that out into your real life. You now become a far superior human being relative to who you were before, because now you are better battle tested for things like this to happen. And I really do think that's a really important thing for people to understand, that like, yes, a lot of you are trying to become the fittest human being that you possibly can, but there are a lot of lessons that apply to life beyond the four walls and the 21-15-9s. That is why I think a lot of us, we did gravitate to the sports side of CrossFit, but now we're finding there's much more lessons in like life in general and what we do here day in and day out, more so than like, how do we get someone to get 15 more pounds on their back squat, which is obviously still exciting, but a lot of the stuff transcends the four walls of the gym.
True.
Yeah, a lot of times you can tell, and people can tell if, like, when I'm stressed out, you can tell when other people are stressed out, and it's like, what is that doing to your quality of training, to your quality of relationships and stuff like that? And is that a net negative or positive? A lot of people like to think of it in terms of just like, I'm stressed, therefore my training is gonna be bad, or like, I am stressed, therefore I need to train. And it's like, is that just thinking and being aware of like, what is it that's actually causing stress, and then trying to address that. And sometimes that means like, no, I don't need to do this extra training piece because that's another form of stress. Or is it just, maybe I do need to go for like a 30-minute walk because after, X number of minutes of walking, like blood sugar starts to go down, cortisol starts to go down, you start to be a little bit little bit more alert, a little bit more awake. What are the things that are able to kind of kick you out of that, I'm really stressed out and I need some sort of reprieve? And how do I kind of implement those things into my daily practice to make sure that I'm, staying level, like on average?
Final thoughts. Other than I can't look at you with that trucker and that mustache.
Oh, I'm just sorry. I was getting a little glistening on the forehead, so I put the hat on so you couldn't see the sheen of my forehead.
I don't know.
I like
Pretty
it.
sweaty
I don't know what sort of stereotype you fit into. Maybe you are completely off the reservation, but something's happening over here.
We all know that.
that I don't understand.
Again, I think the biggest thing to take apart from both episodes is there are a lot of things that you can do that have a very low barrier to entry that are simple but not easy. And convincing yourself to take on one or two of these things could have a tremendous impact on your day-to-day life, your training, how you interact with other people. And, one of the things that I think we try to do with all of our podcasts, all of our media, all the things that we put out there is try to create easier avenues for people to follow along so they don't have to go into the library and dig out a textbook that has a study from 1947 that says 3 rhesus monkeys did this bullshit and all of a sudden they're happier rhesus monkeys. Like, the idea here is, what can we find that's simple enough for you to follow along with and that you can see profound change in your life? And if you do it once, you're more inclined to do another one. So take one or two of these things, really try to pour effort into it for a 4 to 6 week stretch. And, while you're doing that, either use your Whoop journal or journal out, in a notes app on your phone, or just do a personal inventory every day, every night before bed. Go to bed. Did what I did today make a bigger change in my life? And do I feel better? And then, when those behaviors become second nature and you see the benefit, you're more likely to do others and then pass it along to other people. And if we can continue to make each other happier and healthier, the world's going to be a better place, and you're going to find more self-fulfillment and enjoyment in that world.
Yeah, I think just picking one of the things, maybe two of the things that we talked about, or, if you're picking more of them, they go together. Like, okay, I'm going to start warming up and cooling down more effectively. Picking a small number of things, and probably just pick the one that sounds like the most attainable. I think the barrier to entry thing, kind of the snowball effect, is pretty powerful, and just do the one thing that you were just like, yep, that's a really easy barrier to entry for me. I'm going to start doing it, and start stacking those habits in that way. It's a lot easier to start building habits with something that doesn't really feel like you're doing any extra work. And all of a sudden you're now doing, 2, 3, 4, 5 other things that are compounding and benefiting your training.
I think you can listen to an episode like this, and this goes for athletes, coaches, affiliate members, the random non-affiliate member that this podcast was shared with. You can listen to this and maybe get information overload and be like, man, I don't fucking sleep perfect and eat perfect and, warm up and cool down. And I've never even been in a sauna, and I fucking scream at people every time I drive down the street. And cut yourself a little bit of slack. We're trying to present a lot of ideas.
Just how you feel better.
Yeah.
Screaming.
Instead of go for a walk, I just go for a drive. Just drive
with strangers.
I just do Riverside shuttles in my Mazda. Just screaming.
It's getting bad when he's laughing while he's doing it.
He's having a great time.
I feel so much better.
Sorry. I didn't actually mean it.
I was screaming at pillows. I scream at strangers.
That's lovely. But but you can feel overwhelmed when you're listening to this, or you can put yourself through the ringer of like this perfect human being that doesn't exist. Life is going to be a constant version of that test retest model, and you're going to improve in one area and then it's going to make another area glaring. And like you guys already said, but just to reiterate, just find that one thing and get to work. If you're really that upset about the way something is going in your life, you have the ability through some of the tools that we've put out there to make some changes. And that could be, I didn't make it to the level during the season that I wanted to. All right, we got an answer for you. You know, when I'm coaching, I don't know how to get a point across to an athlete, whatever it is. There's a lot in this episode, depending on where you're at in your life, and just pick those things out and try to move the needle a little bit.
I thought you were going to go a slightly different direction, but I think this is important too, that perfect is the enemy of progress. I think in a lot of ways, like if you're listening to this and you're just like you said, I can't right now, I can't get 9 hours of sleep. I don't have time to do like this full 15-minute warm up training piece, full 15-minute cool down, all these protocols. Like you don't have to do everything. One, we just said that you don't have to do everything, but you also don't have to do it like 100% perfectly either. Like a little bit of progress in the right direction. You're just, again, kind of moving that average. If you didn't warm up before and you warmed up some today, you've moved that average in the right direction. It's the same thing with any of these habits. As long as you are making that conscious effort and hopefully paying attention to the results that they yield, it'll eventually become kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I got a great idea for another episode, but it's too deep. It's way too deep. It might be even so deep that we have to get an expert in here to talk about it. Yeah, but
what are those?
It's buried. 2159 expert over there in the trucker and the mustache. All right, ladies and gents, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Misfit Podcast, and thank you to our show sponsors, sharpentheaxecode.com for your favorite gear. Use your favorite athlete code. You save money. You're paying them to fulfill their athlete-like dreams. Properfuel.co. Use the code word Misfit to save in any and all orders. We are misfitathletics.com in the SugarWOD marketplace, or teammisfit.com in the SugarWOD marketplace for your affiliate programming needs. I will not see you next week, but Chuckles 1 and 2 just might.